Hi, I'm Joanne Banko, author, designer, and sewing educator. And I have a favorite fashion accessory. It's a belt. Belts are full of potential for dressing up clothes, for tying together an outfit, and I certainly have my share of ready-mades that I've purchased from the store, but wait till you see how easy it is to make your own. I've got lots of different styles to show you and some tips and tricks so you can make your own beautiful belts. All right, let's take a look at some of the samples here. I've got a simple belt with D-ring closure. These are really simple. It's just a tube of fabric stitched all the way through, the raw ends turned under, and inserted into the D-rings. Very, very simple. How about elastic? There's some great colored elastics out there. You could buy a novelty buckle, just simply slip in and top stitch the edge. If you think you want to make it washable, then go ahead and consider using some hook and loop closure tape, maybe some snaps. In fact, if you have a belt buckle like this, a novelty belt buckle, and you have a fancy fabric that you maybe want to keep, clean, you can do the same thing. But it's just as easy just to turn under that raw edge, finish it with an overcast stitch even, and have it a single layer, and do a few hand stitches. So you have a really pretty belt with a really novelty, gorgeous buckle. So let's talk a little bit about the ones on the garments here. Very obvious. Again, I'm using a belt to tie together a color scheme. This particular wrap I made from scratch and then made the belt literally from scraps. Just, again, sewed a tube, top stitched it, and then inserted the buckle and made some eyelets. I'm going to show you how to make those eyelets in just a minute here. Look at the plain denim dress. It's another dress just the same as the one I have on, totally different look with totally different colors, and the novelty belt tying that color scheme together. Now when you're considering making the pattern, let's look over at the table here. You can see I've got a pattern piece. Simple shape, it could be squared off at the ends, it could be rounded, it's whatever you choose. Take a look in your closet and see, maybe you'll get some inspiration from some belts that you already have. Now what about determining size? Again, I say go to a belt that you're comfortable wearing and use that even for your positioning for your eyelets, because in all likelihood you're going to be happy with that one. If not, you can certainly adjust when you finish it up. I like to make mine out of pattern tracing cloth, then I've got a grid. It's really easy to measure. How about style as far as width? It's all about comfort, and we all have our own personal preferences. So again, I recommend that you try belts on and see what width do you like. Make a note of that and then very simply make your pattern to match. All right, let's go sit down at the machine. Let me give you a few tips and tricks for actually sewing these belts. So I've got just a little mini belt here as a little sample, and you can see I've got a pointed end. So let me show you how to sew that. I've got my machine set up just with an ordinary straight stitch. I'm not going to continue along the whole length of the belt. We'll just start here and do the little tip part. So we're sewing along, and I'm going to reselect my stitch here. I had another stitch selected, and I'm going to just move that forward just a little bit. Normally I'd want to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So guess what? When I have my standard presser foot on this machine, and I change my width to 5.5, it's going to give me just about a perfect 1/4 inch from the edge. So I go along that edge. Here's the key part. When I get to that point, I want to turn that corner, and I want to take 1 or 2 stitches across that point diagonally before I continue around. So I'm going to do that again. Sew up to the next point and take 1 or 2 stitches diagonally. The amount really depends on the thickness of your fabric. Fabric that's a little thinner, you would only take 1 stitch. Fabric's a little thicker, you might take 2. Okay, again, 1 more diagonal stitch. And then pivot again so that I have a really nice semi-rounded corner. Let me take this out of the machine and you can see there. See how those points are just a little bit rounded? What that does is when you actually turn that belt right side out, you've got a nice edge on each one of those points. If we would have pivoted right on the exact seam line, we'd have a little bit too sharp of a point, so by rounding that off just a little bit, it gives it a smoother, nicer look. Now, another thing I like to do on belts is take the time to do top stitching. If I'm going to do top stitching, in all likelihood, I'm going to do that on the single layer with my interfacing attached instead of doing it through both layers. It'll lay a little bit smoother that way, and I basically decorated the right side of the belt so that I'm ready to sew that into the tube. All right, now what about finishing? Well, we've got just a couple more steps, and once our tube is all stitched, turned right side out, then we're able to stitch the overcast on the edge and then make our little eyelets. I've already got one little machine-made eyelet on the end, and that's where my buckle is going to go through, so that the little prong for the buckle is going to poke right through. But let me show you how to stitch the eyelets on the machine. I'm going to change the presser foot. I'm going to change to presser foot N. That's normally my decorative stitch foot, but it's also the foot that gives the movement for doing the eyelet. Of course, I would mark these, but I want to make this really simple to show you. So I'm going to select the eyelet stitch, simply lower the presser foot. I want my eyelets spaced in the center, and I'm good to go. It goes all around that full circle with a little satin stitch, one time and stops. I like to make mine just a little fuller, gives them just a little bit of a nicer look, so I'm going to go stitch with that in place one more time, right around, ties off, and voila, I have a beautiful stitched eyelet. Let me trim that so that you can see that really nice and neat and close. I've used a thread that's just a little bit darker. You can actually use something that matches very close, and your eyelets are just going to kind of disappear. All right, how are we going to open those now? We need a little hole puncher, commonly called an awl, and we would do this on a protected surface. Simply slice that open very, very carefully. All right, let's go back over to the table for just a second. I want to show you just another option, another alternative. If you don't have eyelet stitches built into your machine, then you could consider using metal eyelets. They're special tools. Eyelets come in various colors. They're the same kind that you would find on a ready-made belt. Very easy, very simple. How about turning that tube right side out? Well, there's lots of different tools for that. One of my favorite is just a good old-fashioned dowel rod, especially when I have a really long strip. So today, we've explored a whole bunch of different belt styles. I hope you'll visit the website. We have complete instructions for you, even for this bonus embroidered belt, for making all different kinds of beautiful belts to dress up your wardrobe.